Hello, this is Costas Constantinou.
And this is Eleni Christodoulou. And the purpose of this video abstract is to give you a snapshot of our paper published in the Review of International Studies in a special issue that celebrates its 50th anniversary. The special issue is entitled Global Politics, the Next 50 Years, and our paper on ecological diplomacy fits well with this aspect, as we believe it is a topic that will be of utmost importance in the decades to come. Our paper's title is on Making Peace with Nature, Visions and Challenges Towards an Ecological Diplomacy. Our main objective is to explore how ecological diplomacy can be operationalized in the 21st century in ways that go beyond mere rhetoric or co-optation by states and international organizations. We look at the kind of diplomacy that can be envisioned for reconciliation ecology to be credible and sustainable beyond the anthropocentric frame that has so far characterized such attempts. To put it simply, we explore nature as diplomatic interlocutor in the context of peacemaking with nature.
In recent years, we have heard the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, but also others, repeatedly denouncing humanity's waging war on nature and declaring that making peace with nature is a defining task of the 21st century. Our paper begins by interrogating these calls for making peace with nature. War imaginings and pleas for peace are meant to dramatize and mobilize people about the planetary devastation that continues unabated before us. Still, the choice of language yields insights as to the admission of responsibility, the perceived nature of the problem, the challenges ahead, and the radical change of vision required to tackle the environmental crisis. As we suggest in our paper, such calls represent a significant shift in ontology, not only within the UN system, but also beyond. Nevertheless, they're based on traditional paradigms of peace building that fail to sufficiently capture the diplomatic aspects and complex local dynamics of the human-nature relationship. Therefore, in our paper, we suggest a reconceptualization based on an ecological diplomacy that is both expansive and transformative and views this human-nature relationship as one of troubled coexistence.
To conceptualize this diplomatic transformation, our article builds on insights that have valorized diplomacy in the context of political ecology and planetary cohabitation. Within the diplomatic studies literature, works have argued for the need to revise diplomatic culture and embed a new diplomatic ethos by way of addressing problems more holistically, more sustainably, and in ways that support cohabitation. Beyond the IR discipline, the value of diplomacy for addressing the ecological conundrum has been highlighted by philosophers of science and of human-non-human relations, most notably Isabelle Stengers, Bruno Latour, and Baptiste Morisot. We build on these insights to suggest that diplomatic transformations concerned with aspirations for reconciliation, ecology, and planetary cohabitation can be streamlined around four realizations. First, realizing that a range of relationships are diplomatic ones beyond those that are formally established in international law. Consequently, recognizing a plurality of not insignificant others that exists in nature and needs to be engaged with horizontally and not merely governed or ignored. Second, realizing the importance of enhancing cosmovision and pluriversality, deepening and civilizing relationships, as well as human and more than human interdependencies. Third, realizing that ecological diplomats, whoever they might be called to represent, need to also intensely mediate. Ultimately, we argue, ecological diplomats should also serve biotic and more than human collectives. And fourth, realizing that peacemaking with nature is complex, precarious, and constantly needs to be worked on and for in both macro-diplomatic and micro-diplomatic scales. In the next 50 years, we suggest that the scholarly task of understanding and explaining more than human diplomacies will be on the rise. Thus, moving diplomacy beyond state-centries, anthropocentries, and beyond logocentries, and in doing so, addressing modes of coexistence in different spatial and scalar contexts.
Empirically, our article interrogates existing practices of the UN and sheds light on tensions, oscillations, and discrepancies within its environmental agendas. We examine whether the UN merely practices a multilateralization of sovereignty, with states being the only key actors, or if it offers evidence of strong plurilateralism. We then zoom in on one of the most promising and less known and under-researched programs of the UN system, called the Harmony with Nature program, which pioneers Earth-based jurisprudence and rights of nature. We then briefly look at more radical programs outside the UN, like the Embassy of the North Sea, which is based at The Hague, and ponder how far these diplomacies within and without the UN could really help us re-envision our troubled coexistence with nature in a less violent and more convivial manner. We delve into questions like the recognition of interlocutors for nature. So, who speaks for nature? Who speaks for humanity? Both nature and humanity encompass a multiplicity of subjects and communities, and so accrediting who speaks for who is not an easy task. At the same time, drawing a sharp distinction between humanity and nature has been complicit with the lack of solidarity and sensitivity towards nature, as well as with hierarchical positioning and production of human mastery. It also mistakenly assumes a sort of unified humanity when in fact there is prevailing disunity. These debates, as we show in our paper, raise anew the question of diplomatic subjectivity. On the one hand, what entities and forms of life within nature are recognized as worthy of engaging with, and on the other, who can have a legitimate claim to represent them? If these sound interesting topics to you, we encourage you to take a look at our full paper and to think about these issues, as they say, not just outside the box, but as if there is no box. Thank you.
Thank you.